Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campia, and this is our special wide open discussion, review, all spoilery of John Krasinski's new horror film, A Quiet Place. Now, again, in case I didn't make it very clear, this is a spoiler review and discussion. We're going to be talking here in this video amongst friends like we're all people who sat down and watched the film together. So, if you have not seen A Quiet Place, I would strongly urge you to stop watching right now. Come back and watch the video after you've had a chance to see the movie. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk for the next 15, 20 minutes or so about things that really stood out to me about A Quiet Place. I'm then going to go over to the live chat. You guys let me know about some big scenes or big moments or big elements or just like even little things that you notice that you want us to discuss as well. And we'll wrap this thing up. Okay, so let's just talk about this movie, Quiet Place. Okay, so if you saw my initial review, my non-spoiler review, you know I love this movie. I absolutely love this movie. So let's go through some things here. Okay, so one of the most interesting things that stands out to me, and I admit it kind of bothered me a little bit for a minute, but now I love it, was the fact that we never find out squat about these monsters. Where they come from, what caused them to come into being, you know, were they part of an alien invasion, were they just things on meteors that fell from space? There might have been more clues in the movie written on the newspapers along the walls and stuff like that I didn't catch, but I just caught the big ones. It's sound. Sound gets them. You know, stay indoors, threat spreads, and all this kind of like world-ending kind of stuff. But by the end of the film, they never like explain where they come from. And I'm going to admit, at first that kind of bothered me. But then I thought about it for a second. I went, well, you know what though? It didn't matter where they came from. It doesn't matter what the origin of these monsters are or what caused them to come into being or what brought about the end of the world. It doesn't matter because that's not what this movie's about. The movie's about this family trying to survive. This family and their love for each other and them trying to survive. And that's what the movie's about. Anything else is just extra information that wasn't needed for the guts of the movie. No pun intended. And once I kind of wrapped my head around that, I realized, oh yeah, it doesn't matter where the monsters came from. Does not matter in the least where they came from. And then I was okay with it. So yeah, so that stopped being a problem for me. But it might be a problem for some other people, the fact that they went through the movie and never kind of revealed where they came from. Okay, now, let's get into the thing that first shocked the hell out of me in this movie. All right? Their littlest son getting killed. I didn't see it coming. Did not see it coming. Even while it was happening, I didn't see it happening. What I thought was going to happen was John Krasinski I thought John Krasinski was going to get to the kid, take the space shuttle, and throw it. And then you see the monster change direction and go off, and it's destroying, like ripping apart the space shuttle or whatever. And they were like, ooh, that's what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be a demonstration of just it's sound that attracts the monsters, and the monsters will go right to wherever the sound is and rip apart whatever the sound is. I did not think they were going to get the kid. I didn't think they were going to get the kid. And you know, it's funny because we came out of the movie, and I mentioned that to Anne, and Anne said, oh no, I knew that kid was going to get it. I'm like, really? And so there's a whole ton of you that knew the kid was going to bite it. I did not know the kid was going to bite it. And the moment they had the kid bite it, I was like, oh my God, like all rules are off. There's no rules here. Like this. So, and it added to this family is already living with so much tragedy and loss. The whole world has gone to hell. But now they suffered something very personal and the loss of their child. And I just remember sitting in that theater like this. When the kid died, like probably for a good 15 seconds, I was like, and I started looking around to see if everybody else was as stunned as me. I'm like, did that really happen? Did that really happen? Like and even about 5 seconds after it happened, after the kid died, I kept expecting it to be like a bad dream sequence where Krasinski would go, or the daughter who gave him the space shuttle would, like, she was envisioning something horrible that could happen because she gave him the space shuttle or something. But nope, it was real. The kid dies. And like oh my God, I was heartbroken right from the beginning. And that is how they started A Quiet Place, with a little boy getting ripped to shreds. I'm like, oh my God, it's horrifying. It's terrible. Okay, so then they fast forward. And by the way, I thought it was really interesting too. They start off the movie with like day 89. So it's like they tell you, okay, folks, whatever this tragic event was that changed the face of the earth with the monster showing up, it happened almost 3 months ago. And they've already been living in this for 3 months. And then they fast forward to like day 400 and something or else. So over a year later, right? And it was an interesting device for them to start the film with. And it kind of set the tone in my own head for the movie. And then the little boy dying, and like, oh my God. Okay, so then it became really interesting about, and at first I thought, well, this is unrealistic. But then I thought about it and went, no, this is the way it would probably really be. The way the family had just adjusted to life. This is now normal life. We live surrounded by monsters, and yet we cook dinner, we do laundry, we have meals together, we do chores, blah, blah, blah. It's just that we're constantly under the threat that a monster could pop up and eat us at any moment. But as long as we stay quiet, we're fine. And like I said, the way they kind of portrayed that as just being normal everyday life, at first I went, oh, come on. But then I thought about it and I watched the way they portrayed it. It's like, no, this is, after 400 and something days, it would just become routine. This is just normal life. Like you and I live normal life. Except that you can't yell Beetlejuice, 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 or else your life will go to hell, right? For them, it's just, you just can't make any noise. And as long as we do everything super quiet, I mean, they're laying around at home playing Monopoly, rolling dice. I mean, the way the movie conveyed regular life within the midst of this insane chaos of a post-apocalyptic world, I thought was a bold decision that Krasinski made. And I really dug the fact, they're rolling dice on mats. All the pieces, they even weren't just using like click, click, click. All their pieces were made out of some kind of yarn, knitted yarn thing. And I thought that was really neat too. Whenever they made stuff, but it's not like, at the same time, there were only 3 monsters. Because remember, we saw him written on his whiteboard. At least 3 in the area. Okay, so it's not like all the monsters were sitting with their ear to the door. So the one scene where the kid knocks over the lantern, that could have been it. But it wasn't. So like the odd little slip may not have been the end of the world, but any little slip could be the end of their lives. You know what I mean? So I like that they set that up as well, because let's face it, there's no way you can go through life weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months without making some kind of little sound, right? So if any little thing could kill you, but it won't necessarily kill you. So I thought the rules of that world that John Krasinski was setting up worked well in there. Okay. Let's talk for a second about the daughter. And then I'm going to talk about the daughter. I'm going to talk about the baby. And I'm going to talk about Krasinski's death. I'm going to go over that stuff pretty quick. But then I'm going to go over to your guys and your live stuff that you're sending in here, because that's where I really want to focus our attention on. But the daughter was great, because having the daughter, the deaf daughter, besides the fact that her performance was incredible. And I should have had this pulled up earlier, but I didn't. I'm just going to bring up the IMDb page, because I looked up her name before and I totally forgot the actress's name, the young actress who played the daughter. Regan, Millicent Simmons is the girl who played the daughter. Oh my God, how good was she? Like seriously, how good was she? She was so good. Not only her, but the little boy, Noah Jupe. Oh my goodness. Like, when he was just scared about, like, when they were at the river with John Krasinski and he starts making some noise, and the little kid's like, oh, like, the fear on that kid's face was so palatable. Like, it was so real. It sucked me into the movie. I was amazed by these two kids. Anyway, as a plot device, them making their daughter deaf was perfect for this world, because they were a family that was adapt to living in quiet. They were a family that was already adapted to, we speak in sign, I don't know sign language. We speak in sign language. Like, so that made them a perfect family to focus this story on, right? It kind of gave them, in this world gone to hell, in this post-apocalyptic world, it gave that Abbott family an advantage over most families. So I thought that was really creative. So she was wonderful. Oh, and by the way, in case I forget to mention this earlier, this is the most important thing. This, what I'm about to say, is the most important thing to this movie that I didn't even really think about till yesterday. At the end of the day, it was the father's, John Krasinski's, Lee Abbott was his name, was the name of the character. It was Lee's unrelenting, unstopping love for his daughter that ultimately saved his family. And I'm not talking about him standing there and going, ah, so the monster would come and kill him and leave his kids alone. That's not it. It was the fact that he was down in that workshop every day, toiling and blood, sweat, tears, working ceaselessly. You saw all the different models just trying to come up in the middle of this crazy world with a hearing aid for his daughter. Just to help his daughter, to make her feel a little bit better, a little bit more normal, if you want. It was his unrelenting, ceaseless love for his daughter, constantly working for that. And that thing that was a result of his love for his daughter was ultimately the thing, with the sound it projected, was ultimately the thing that saved his family and maybe the world from those monsters. It was his love that saved them. And not the love of him going, ah, but the love of that expression of his love for his daughter, just making, even when she was mad at him, even when she was becoming a miserable teenager, even with all of that, he loved her ceaselessly. And it was the result of that love that saved the day at the end. And I didn't even think about that until yesterday. And that's the part that made my heart really start to pound when I thought about that. It was his love that saved them. And maybe it was his love that saves the world if we follow, if they follow that movie through to its conclusion. Okay, the baby stuff. Oh my God. So when they first show that Emily Blunt is pregnant, I remember thinking, what the hell are they thinking? What are they thinking having a baby? That is not going to be a quiet moment. Having a baby is not going to be a quiet moment. Like if the mom's going to scream, and even if she is somehow got so much self-discipline and control that she can stop herself from screaming out, you got a baby. But they had it all figured out. That's why I say, what's with the gas mask? You know what I thought the gas mask was for at first? I thought it was knockout gas. And I thought it was so when the baby's born and is about to cry, knock the baby out. That's so dark of me to think that way, I know. But I thought they were just going to, like for the first 3 years of the baby's life, they were going to keep it unconscious. I mean, I didn't know. But what it came down to was them, no, we're going to seal the baby in a box. And we need to give it oxygen so it can breathe and be fine. But we're going to keep it in a soundproof box for when it's crying. I thought, genius. Absolutely genius. But oh my God, when she's going into labor as the monsters are coming in the house, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like I'm just freaking out in the theater, right? It was the tension of it that was just killing me and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously we get to the big scene with ultimately, like the only reason Lee is alive, like as far as Lee is concerned, that's the John Krasinski character. The only reason in his mind that he is alive is to protect his kids and protect his family. Nothing else matters to him. And that moment when the monster's on top of the truck and his kids are inside the truck and he's like, there's no way I can distract it. There's no way I can get us all out of this. One of us has got to die. And he dies for his kids. And the fact that he's able to, because of the sign language, he's able to have a quick conversation with his daughter and his children. And his last words that he loves them and that he's always loved them. And he shows them his love for them by sacrificing himself for them. I mean, and it's things like that that makes this movie so special. It's not just another paint-by-the-numbers zombie film where, woo, look at the kills and the gruesome, blah, blah, blah. This movie is tense and terrifying and all that, but you feel the love between the characters. There's moments of incredible devotion and sacrifice, and it's such a special movie beyond the monsters. And that's what takes this movie to a different level than a lot of these, even good horror films. I mean, that moment there as he's communicating with his daughter, I'm just like, you feel yourself getting choked. You know what's coming. You know he's about to die. And it's just, oh. And then ultimately, the frequencies, as they dropped Easter eggs throughout the film, that the frequency this thing is pitching on is interacting somehow with the frequency that these creatures spit out, and what they communicate with is ultimately what saves the day. I thought it was a really cool device. And of course, it ends with the final two rushing back towards the house to get the family, when really it's just going to be a slaughter because they already know how to take these things out now. And then boom, and then it ends just with her cocking the gun. And the screen goes black, and at first I'm like, oh, come on. But then I thought, you know what? Nope. That was a perfect place to end the movie. It's a 90-minute movie, moves so crisp and so quick, and that movie ends. I was just sitting there wanting more. What a great movie. What a great movie is Quiet Place. So, yeah, guys, so there are my thoughts on Quiet Place. I am thrilled with this film. I'm loving it more and more just the more we're talking about it here. I'm digging this movie so much. Okay, so now for the rest of the time, guys, I'm just going to go over to your live stuff. You guys throw in what it is you want us to discuss here as far as the movie goes. So let's hop to it. Okay. Adamus95 writes, I really liked Quiet Place. Only real gripe I have is the ending. You know, it's so funny. I was just saying how much I love the ending. It felt too abrupt for me, but I absolutely love the performances and the creature. Yeah, the creatures, the creature design. I mentioned it in the non-spoiler review. My goodness, the creature design was good. Very creepy, and they looked fantastic. And so I wasn't surprised when the credits started to roll and they showed, visual effects by Industrial Light and Magic. That's the Lucasfilm company, the best visual effects company in the world. It's like, oh yeah, of course they did it. And that was probably the most expensive thing in that movie, because otherwise it was a real cheap movie. I'm going to disagree with you, Adamus. I admit at first it's like, whoa, it's over? But then I thought, I was like, no, that's a perfect place to end the movie. Because again, remember when I said I got over not learning about those monsters because I realized that's not what this movie's about. And then the same thing, I got over them ending with the cocking of the shotgun because I realized, oh yeah, everything that happens after this point is really no longer what this movie's about. What this movie is about ran its course, and it was now done. And it was love that was saved them, and that story was now over. We know what happens when the monsters come. Like, they've got the tools now to incapacitate them and blow their heads off. They're going to die. So I agree with you. At first, it was very abrupt to me. But then I thought about it. I was like, oh, yeah. Because at this point, when she cocks that gun, really the story's over at that point. Nothing unnecessary in it. So I actually really dug it. But I can see where you're coming from, because I also, for a moment, kind of felt like it was kind of abrupt. Like, whoa, really? That's it? Let's see. AFC writes, couldn't help but think of Venom when seeing the creatures. You are not the only person, my friend. Like, the design of them, if you had told me this was a concept piece for Venom that they then discarded and A Quiet Place went, well, hey, if you're not going to use it for anything else, we'll use it and can make it a little bit cheaper for us, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised at all if we found out that those creatures were rejected models for what Venom was going to look like in the Venom movie. That's not what they are. But you're right. There was definitely a Venom vibe to it, especially with the size of the teeth, right? Like, the teeth were huge. So that's I had the same thought in my head. I really did. Rex Cousins writes, the scene with Emily giving birth in the bathtub was one of the most chilling and scary scenes I've ever seen. Keep up the great work. Thanks a lot, Rex. And you're right. I mean, you're in a movie where you have to stay totally silent and you're trying to give birth. Well, really, you're trying not to give birth, but you're giving birth with this monster in the house. Not only is your life on the line, the life of your about to be born child is on the line. And that's when this monster's creeping up. That's when you go into labor. And how the hell do you stay quiet? How do you stay quiet? And it was beautifully done. Even the way they had it orchestrated. So I'm convinced, even though they should have had this in place anyway to distract the monsters, I'm convinced those fireworks were there for when she was going to give birth. Now, I don't think John Krasinski knew that she was going in labor when he told his son to set off the fireworks. That was just to get the monsters away from the house. But I have a feeling, and I'd love to ask John Krasinski about this, that the reason the family had those fireworks set up, the real reason was for when Emily Blunt goes into labor, because they probably knew she wouldn't be able to just stay quiet while giving birth, right? So I had a feeling that was probably all tied in. But yeah, amazingly choreographed scene. Just this, the structure of that scene was so well put together. All right, Adam Griffin writes, thank you for doing video discussions like these. Much of online film commentary is about speculation and news and not as much about the film themselves. Oh yeah, we're here to talk about the movies too. I mean, that's why we're going to get together and talk about this damn thing. And yeah, and hey, you know, the news and the speculation, it's great. Hey man, that's my bread and butter. I love doing that stuff too. But I also love when we can do these kinds of videos, get together and just actually talk about the movie. Like, you bet your ass that Saturday the 20th, no, the Saturday the 28th, we are probably going to do like a 2-hour open Avengers Infinity War spoiler discussion. Just like this one, it's probably going to be about 2 hours though. We're just going to talk, and so you know we're going to do that. But yeah, and you know what? Maybe even if nobody watches these videos, I've been tempted. Forgive me as I get sidetracked for a second. I've been tempted, even because I've only been doing these spoiler reviews for kind of popular movies, but I'm wondering if I should do these spoiler reviews for most movies that open. Like when a movie opens on a weekend, do my review, but also do an open spoiler review, even if just like 10 of us get in here to talk about it. I don't know, maybe something for me to think about. But thanks for the observation, Adam. Appreciate that. Next one comes to us from Trevor Riches, who writes, where's the Thursday companion video? There was a companion video on Thursday, so I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. If you're talking about the one that would have aired yesterday, I recorded that one late, so that's going to go up later today. It's going to go up today. It is, so all those questions from Thursday, their companion video is going to be today. It is difficult for me. You guys know I'm putting up between 3 and 5 videos a day. That is tough on your own. That is tough. Yeah, I got Jonathan helping me with some editing. I got Ray at home doing some graphics, but ultimately it's really just me doing these videos. So sometimes a companion video gets pushed back like one day. So that's the case. So the companion video that would have gone up yesterday will go up tomorrow. Anyway, we're here to talk about the movie right now. Curtis Lopez writes, the girl really annoyed me throughout because of her attitude, but she redeemed herself in the end. But here's the thing, Curtis. First of all, 13-year-old girl, that's what they act like. Young teenagers are a bunch of little assholes. I'm sorry, you were, I was, young teenagers, all assholes. I mean, that's what we are by nature, right? When we hit that age, that's what we become. And on top of that, she's living in a post-apocalyptic world. On top of that, she is a character who blames herself for the death of her little brother, even though it wasn't her fault. On top of that, she watched her little brother die, and they live in this world, I mean, and she's like this budding young, probably 12, 13, maybe 14 years old. She's this young teenage girl, tween girl. I mean, of course, she's going to be messed up, man. And so to me, that added to the real of the fact that she had some attitude and the fact that she was difficult and the fact, to me, that just added to it. I'll be honest with you. And I could totally get why she would annoy you. I totally get that. But to me, it was that element of her character that just made it all the more real to me. And the more real the movie made everything, sucked you into the movie more, which made it more terrifying and more tense. So to me, it was a plus. But I could totally see where you're coming from. Totally can, about why she would be bothering you. Curtis follows up. Really liked the end, had a shit's about to go down kind of vibe. Totally agree. And even though I said, I get why they ended it there, the story is done, there was that visceral part of me that wanted to see Emily Blunt, having just given birth to a child, blowing the heads off some monsters. I gotta admit, there was part of me that wanted to see that, but that was just the visceral part of me. I totally dug it though. I love that ending. I love the way they did that. Gareth Tucson writes, use of sound in this film is tense and heartbreaking. Here's the thing. I told this story. I can't remember if I told the story in the review or on the John Campea show. But when I came out of the theater, this is how much I was drawn into the movie and the sound and lack thereof played into it. I went into the bathroom after I came out of the movie theater and I realized I've been trying to stay silent. And it's because I was drawn, my head was still in the headspace of the movie. And I'm even in the bathroom, I was like, I'm even like breathing quietly and I'm just trying to pee as quietly as possible. Then I realized, oh yeah, I'm not in the movie. And then just fire hose it all over the place after that. But I mean, that's how much the sound, lack thereof, and when they used it was so effective. Yeah, absolutely. Matthew Carrera writes, when John's character died, my heart, oh my God, they set it up so beautifully. I mean, I've already talked about the conversation with the daughter and blah, blah, blah. It was just like, and you knew, what I loved about it too, was he wasn't acting like some hero. Haha, I laugh in the face of death. Haha. No, he didn't do that. You could tell when he screamed, he did not want to do it. You could tell when he's standing there and went, ah, like he's screaming out, but you could see he's terrified. He doesn't want to sit there and bring the monsters over to him, but he does it because he's got to save his kids. Like he wasn't they didn't pull some macho hero bullshit. Come get me, you stupid son of a bitch. No, it was, he screamed, and as he was screamed, you could tell he was terrified. You could tell he was scared to death. And I loved that. And it added, like you're pointing out here, Matthew, it added to that heartbreak of the moment, the heartbreak of what was happening and the horror of what was happening. And the kids had to watch their dad die. And so brilliant. Brilliantly done. Good point. Matthew follows up with best of 2008 by far, Ready Player One, a close second. You know, it's funny. Earlier on today on the John Campea Show, I talked about my four best movies of the year so far. I go number 4, Ready Player One. Number 3, Paddington 2. Number 2, A Quiet Place. And I just barely, I have Black Panther edging out A Quiet Place, but by the thinnest of hairs. And if so much so that I wouldn't debate with you, Matthew. Like you call it the best of the year so far, I wouldn't debate it with you. I wouldn't even argue it with you. Because to me, it's so close that I have no problem somebody thinking this is the best movie of the year so far. And by the way, if you ask me in 2 weeks or after I watch the movie a second time, I might even agree. It's very possible that right now I have Black Panther over it, but it's possible in another week or two I could change that order a bit. Like the movie's just so good. Okay. ZCM Zombie writes, the creature reminds me of the Demogorgon. Yeah, that's another good one from Stranger Things and the Cloverfield Monster. Didn't really remind me much of the Cloverfield Monster, but the Demogorgon is a good example. I thought the Venom thing, I did not think about the Demogorgon, but you're right. That's a really nice comparison there. I saw some of I saw some similarities there too. Not so much Cloverfield, but I definitely did on that one. And again, the design of it was so terrifying. And the part that really took me over the edge thinking about Venom was the teeth. Like that teeth was and how cool was it? Like when they would open their heads up and like they gave you a physical picture of how supersonic their hearing is. Like how unbelievably acute and sensitive their hearing is. Like I thought that was a great visual image to go along with that these are creatures of sound. And I thought that was a great example of that. That was so well handled. Okay. Next one, Manuel Fernandez writes, loved A Quiet Place, but why didn't John just throw his weapon or a rock towards the field or something and walk on the sand towards the truck instead of sacrificing himself? May not have worked. Remember, they illustrated little sound is great if there's bigger sound. The creature was like on top of that, blah, 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 it gets super loud. If he just throws a rock, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to attract the monster at all. The monster's pounding on metal. It's like taking a big metal gong and hitting it with a sledgehammer and then saying, tap your foot. I'm not going to hear it, right? The only thing he knew that was going to save his kid, he didn't have time to experiment with 5 different ideas. The only thing he knew that was going to do it was scream. Scream. And even when he screamed, the monster didn't hear him immediately. Like it didn't instantly get his attention, right? It took a second or two. And I think that was it. John just knew I've got to act and I got to act now. And so I don't think throwing a rock would have done it. Because like I said, earlier in the film, he sets up, hey, like sound is cool if there's louder sound. Because the louder sound will cover the smaller sound. And that's where he was in a situation. He was in a situation with this creature with its metal solid arms banging on the huge noise, right? He had nothing that could beat that noise. And then there he was. And there he was. Which, so heartbreaking. So heartbreaking. Abraham Ruiz writes, surprised how good the CG was. And that's the thing, when you really consider about how low budget this movie is, because you're watching this movie, it's just like only 6 people appear in the movie, right? Well, 7 if you count the little kid who gets killed. And then there's the other dude and his dead wife. So you count those as 2. So in total, there are 7 people that appear in this movie. And most of the movie happens in this one little farm. That's it. That's where most of the movie... This is such a low-budget film. So when the monsters show up, I wasn't prepared for how good they would look. So clearly, they found out what their budget was and then put 3/4 of their budget to the CGI monsters. And the rest they just kept really simple. That was an inexpensive movie to make other than the monsters. And you're right, it makes you a little bit more surprised with just how good those monsters look by the time they actually show up. Let's see. Matthew Carrera writes, only convenience I noticed was that the baby barely made a peep. I don't know. I mean, maybe if I watched it again, I might agree with you. Off the top of my head, I remember the baby starting to cry and they had to put the oxygen on the baby and put the baby in the box. So, I mean, could the baby have been louder? I guess it could have been louder, but I didn't think they kept the baby quiet when it was out. I thought the baby was pretty much being a baby. Again, though, maybe if I watch it again, I'll agree with you. But I thought they handled it pretty well. At least my first impression of it was that they handled it pretty well. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I have to see it again to know for sure. All right, let's see here. Matthew writes, the family connection was incredible, especially with the aftershock of the young kid's death. Man, I mean, that's really... The heart of this movie wasn't the horror of the post-apocalyptic world. It wasn't the monsters. It wasn't any of that. To me, the heart of the movie, and this is what takes this movie to the next level, was exactly what you're mentioning, Matthew, the family connection, the heart of the family. That's what made this movie special and what made it work so well. And I completely agree with you on that. Canada Rocks writes, love the movie, but I thought the ending with Blunt pumping the shotgun was a bit cheesy and did not fit the tone of the rest of the movie. I don't know. I disagree with you. She's now there. They know for the first time in a year and a half, they know they can kill these things. She's got her children and her newborn baby, and they just killed one. And for the first time since this whole nightmare stopped, they feel empowered. Now they feel like, oh yeah, we can kill these things. Yeah, these things are dead now. And they just killed her husband. They just attacked her children. And now they're racing down. She looks in the video camera, they're racing. Pump that shotgun. Boom. I thought it was great. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if it was completely taken out of context, I could see how it would feel out of pace with the movie. But for me, with the hell this woman has just been through that night, now she's got her kids there, her newborn baby, and for the first time in a year and a half, they feel empowered. I was like, oh yeah, we're the hunters now. Now we're the hunters. And we're bringing you to us because we're going to slaughter you. To me, it was perfect. To me, it looked absolutely right. And when you understand the context in what just happened, it fit in perfectly. To me, if it didn't for you, I get it. That's cool. But for me, because of the context, to me, it fit in perfectly well with the moment. And that's why it worked for me. That's why it worked for me. Manuel Fernandez writes, it's slowly becoming one of my favorite horror films in recent memory, maybe even the decade. I mean, look, I try not to get too ahead of myself after seeing a movie once, but this might be my favorite horror movie since The Descent. This might be my favorite horror movie since The Descent. I got to think about that a little bit. Maybe I won't think so big of it after a few more weeks and it'll just become another movie that I really, really like. But yeah, right now, the way I think about it, it's hard to imagine many other films that I've liked more in the past couple of years. Okay, just a couple more here, guys, then we're going to call it a day. We've already gone over a half hour. Frank Bono writes, very dumb idea not to have safe sex. I mean, come on, that's the one thing. The one thing I would love, another thing I'd love to ask John Krasinski is, do you think that Lee and what was the wife's name was Evelyn, although they never say the name in the movie, I don't think. But do you think Lee and Evelyn Was it just like, oh, she got pregnant? Or do you think it was a part of the healing process to move on, move forward in life? Maybe they always wanted another child and they decided, you know what? We are going to live our lives. Yes, our lives are in a world of chaos and we're in a post-apocalyptic world and we're surrounded by monsters, but we are going to get back on track and live our lives. And maybe part of that was we always said we were going to have a fourth child. We're going to have a fourth child. And I'd be curious to know, to ask Krasinski, was it an oops they got pregnant? Or was it a part of their living their life and maybe part of their healing process and a part of adapting to the new realities of the world to get pregnant and have another child? I don't know. But what you bring up, Frank, is completely legit. Because I remember thinking when they showed it and they showed her belly, I'm like, oh my God, she's pregnant? But yeah, that's exactly what popped in my head too. Okay. Oops, where do we go here? We had a lot more questions come in than I anticipated. Okay. Hey guys, if you have not sent in a question, don't send in any more super chat questions. Don't send in any more because I'm going to get through these last big batch of them, and I might go a little bit quick. I'm going to get through all these. I'm not going to leave any waiting. I'm going to get to all of them, but I won't have time for any more, so please don't send in any more. All right. Matthew Carrera writes, gas mask. I know, right? I was like, I had no idea. I felt stupid afterwards thinking they were just going to knock the baby out and keep it unconscious for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years of its life. Pardon me. But I mean, yeah, so I felt dumb afterwards. I felt very dumb afterwards. Let's see here. Koba writes, why not live near the river? A good point. I mean, well, their house was there. And it seems like they had, being a year and a half into it, it seems like they had figured out how to live life. It feels like they had settled into this is what normal life now is. Now, the thing about why not live near the river, how do you build a house? Because even with the sound of a river, how do you build a house? Because you got to live. And there they had a house, a big giant home with all their necessities there. And all they had to do was make sure they lived quiet. And it seemed like they had figured out how to do that. Trying to lead a normal life, building a house that would have been problematic, I think. So that's probably why I would think. But don't laugh. I think that's something that initially went through my head. Just like, why not live next to something that's really loud all the time? But they had their house. They fit it in such a way that they were able to get into normal life that way. And there you go. Frank writes, monsters look like Venom. That was brought up a little bit earlier. We talked about that too. I completely agree. Let's see. Anthony J. Lee writes, how Krasinski and Cass were able to show emotion through their face and body language was amazing. It was a movie about parents' love for their kids. And that ultimately is what made it so special. And I talked about this in the main review, but when you have a movie where you have so little dialogue, right? It all comes down to the direction and the performance. And when you got to give that performance just with physical expression on your face, your body, all that kind of stuff, that's something special. And for a director to get that kind of performance out of their actors, even when he himself is one of the actors, is amazing. The kids were fantastic. The little boy, the fear in the face. John Krasinski acted the hell out of it with his face. Emily Blunt is Emily Blunt. She's just one of the best in the world right now. I mean, you're right. It was just totally unbelievable. And really, when it comes down to it, what makes this movie special is that it wasn't about monsters. It was about parents who love their kids and doing whatever it takes to protect their kids. And that was so special. Movie Minutes writes, oh, the nail jutting from the stairs made me squeal. And you know what? Oh, when they showed the nail getting stood up in the stair, like when she catches the laundry bag on it, at first I thought, well, that was unnecessary. Having the camera close up on the nail is now standing up. That foreshadowed way too much. It's like, well, clearly now someone's going to come down the stairs and step on it. And that's going to ruin the scene. It didn't ruin the scene. At first I thought they put too much attention on that nail standing there because it told us what's going to happen later. But then it happened later and none of the effectiveness came out. Oh my God, man, when she was walking down, you're in a movie about monsters destroying the world and eating people. And Ann and I don't know that we were ever more freaked out in the movie than when she was walking down those stairs and you knew she was going to step on that nail. And that's the part that Ann and I were like, ah, ah, ah. Like, monster eating the kids, taking the head off of farmers, that was fine. But just watching her walking down the stairs, knowing she was going to step on a nail, that was the part that we went, can't watch, ah! Like, yeah, damn that nail. Damn that nail. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. She Hate Me writes, what are some ideas for a sequel? I don't know. I hope they never do. Because all you can do next for a sequel is make a big action movie of now the humans rising up to take, now that they know how to kill these things, rising up to kill them. So really, I don't know there's any logical place to go. Especially when you understand what the heart of the movie was. This was a movie about these parents and their love for their kids, and that story's told now. And they won. They beat the monsters. They survived, blah, blah. I would really like it. Look, if they decided to do A Quiet Place 2, maybe it's set at the same time as this Quiet Place, but it's with another community of people trying to live in the midst of it. Okay, maybe I could see that, but a sequel? I don't know that I see a sequel for it, to be honest with you. Lori Scott writes, theater I was in was packed / dead silent. People were even chewing quietly. Small details I loved. All the potato chip bags at the store too noisy. Yeah, I mean, right. So there's just stuff they couldn't get, right? And I told this story earlier today on the John Campea Show, but I was so aware of how quiet the theater was and how quiet the movie was that I was even trying to suck on my popcorn instead of crunch it. Because you're just so aware, you're so cognizant, right, of all the noise you're making because of how dead silent the theater was, because it's so tense, and how dead silent the movie is because everybody in the movie is trying to stay quiet. So, yeah, it was one of those things that had an impact on me practically trying to watch the movie at the same time. Let's see, Matthew writes, when Krasinski broke down because he thought his wife died was such a powerful moment. Look, and that's another thing that makes this movie so special, because he is at the same time, you've got this character who's trying to deal with the reality, because it wasn't real, but to him, he thought his wife was now dead. He's trying to cope with and process the reality that his wife is dead, yet he still has 2 kids out there he's trying to save and protect, and he's trying to deal with all this at once. And the way Krasinski acted in that scene, just get the fuck out of here, was so good. Like, just hand him an Academy Award, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it was brilliant. Brilliantly performed. So well done. And you're right, it's just another little way that movie makes you think, oh fuck, what the hell do we do? What do we do? It was just another one of those scenes. And him trying to process the death of his wife while in the midst of an imminent threat to his children. I mean, oh my God. Anyway, okay. Moving on to Juan Absent Good writes, the best part of the movie is the acting without talking. Just so much emotion made me feel like I was there with them. My wife even enjoyed the movie, and she's not a bit fan of scary movies. You're dead on. I mean, and we've talked about that, right, Juan, through this review, is that it's the performances. How do you do these types of performances without expressing words, without being able to fall back on what actors always fall back on, which is the use of words and dialogue and whatever. And they did it all quietly. And it's crazy. And you nailed on something there at the end of your comment there, Juan, that I think is really important. This is a horror movie for people who are not into horror movies. I really believe that. I believe this is a horror movie for people who are not into horror movies. I think you can show this to somebody that they're going to get the crap scared out of them, yes. But you can show this movie to somebody who is not a horror fan. And because, once again, this isn't about the monsters, it's about the family. It's not about the end of the world. It's about a love between parents and their children. And it's beautifully directed, brilliantly acted. This is a horror movie for people who aren't horror fans. And I think you nailed it on there. And I think you explained it. You know, your wife dug it too. Absolutely. I think a lot of people who are not traditional horror fans can watch and love this movie. At least I hope they do. Thanks for writing that in, man. Lori Scott writes, I think the dad screamed and sacrificed himself in part because he was already badly wounded. In this world, no medical care. He would likely die. I don't know about that. I don't know if I agree with you there, Lori. Like, he was wounded, yeah, but he's not a doctor. He was clearly, in good enough shape that he can get up and walk around. So I don't know about that. I don't think there was a extenuating circumstance to him being able to him being willing to sacrifice himself for his kids. Like, I don't think if, I know I'm perfectly healthy, therefore I'm not going to die for these kids. I still got a long life to lead. No, I don't think that was part of the consideration. Maybe you're right. Maybe, I'll talk to John Krasinski someday and I'll ask him about that. And he'll say, oh no, that was part of Lee's thinking, was that, hey, you know what? I'm already injured. I'm probably not going to make it anyways. Maybe. But I got to tell you, my initial reaction is to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree with you on this because I really think that I don't think there was anything going on in his head other than I need to save my kids. And that's it. Nothing else. There was no other extenuating circumstance. There was nothing else to consider. There was nothing else to think about for him. Simply, I need to save my kids. And that's the way I think the movie portrayed it. But who knows? Maybe I'll watch it again and I'll see it the way you just saw it. Let's see. Next one comes to us from ZCM, who writes, how did Emily Blunt live? Because she did scream and then was found to be ended up in the shower while the creature was coming. The timing of the fireworks. There was a little bit of misdirection going on with the editing of the film of the scream and then the fireworks. And the fireworks were the bigger boom, the bigger sound, the bigger all that kind of stuff. So clearly what the movie was trying to tell us was at the moment she screamed, then the fireworks go off. The creature was then distracted by the fireworks, left the house to go after the fireworks. Once that happens, she crawls out of the tub, goes in the shower, closed the door in the shower. So to me, I think that is what the movie was communicating, was the series of events. Cobra writes, being quiet wasn't the answer. They should have been as loud as they could, drive the monster insane, and they can't focus on you. I think you've got a picture in your head, Koba, that I'm not seeing. Because you make as much noise as you can, it just comes and eats you, and kills you, and destroys you, and therefore no more sound. So I'm not quite sure. You know what I think? I think you have a rational idea about how that could have played out in your head, but it's not coming across in your words, because to me it's like, no, you make a sound, it comes and it kills you, no more sound. But maybe you meant it in a different way. Let's see. De Latour Knight writes, proud Patreon support here. Thank you so much, De Latour. Just got out of A Quiet Place. Amazing film. Also, I've been trying your straw butter dispenser trick. There you go. A little tip. I share this tip every once in a while. I love this because to me, popcorn is just a butter delivery device. I like getting butter all on my popcorn, right? So, because what happens, you put butter on, doesn't matter how much butter you put on, it always stays at the top. So then once you eat your first layer of popcorn, no more. What I've done is, I take a straw, put the straw down to near the bottom of the bag, then put the butter dispenser in the top of the straw, hit the butter dispenser, and then move the straw around and start bringing the straw up to get butter all through the layers and then put butter on the top. So I'm glad you tried it, man, and I'm glad it worked for you. All hail buttery goodness. Totally unhealthy for you. Completely unhealthy to do it that way, but who cares? It's popcorn. Laurie Scott writes, mom equals most badass woman in the horror movie since Ellen Ripley in Alien. I thought that end note was perfect. Oh, I agree too. I mean, look, men are very protective and we have protective instincts and blah, blah, blah. But women protecting their children, that's a whole nother level of crazy you don't want to mess with. And this notion that she just watched her husband die, she's got a newborn baby there, she got a shotgun, and now she knows how to kill you. Ha! You're done. You're done. Yes, completely badass. In the midst of all the horror and the monsters, she gave birth, grabbed a shotgun, killed one of these monsters, and was getting ready to wipe the rest of them out too. That is some badassery right there. Lori, Lori writes, am I at the right thing? Yes. Lori writes, Noah Yupe reminds me of Dustin in Stranger Things. Oh, the little boy. Absolutely. Completely agree. Actually, I think Anne mentioned that coming out. She goes, he reminded me a little bit of the one kid from Stranger Things. So yes, absolutely. ZCM writes, the silo scene with the kids reminded me of the end of Titanic and John's scream reminded me of the Willem Wallace. Oh, that is true. The Willem Wallace scream at the end of Braveheart. Yeah, as they're disemboweling him, all that kind of stuff. I didn't think of the Titanic scenario, though, but you're absolutely right. There's room on the metal sheet for two, kid. You're right. That is a really good observation. I didn't even think about that, but it's a great observation. ZCM, just last couple of questions here, guys. Did the wife of that old man die from the monster? If so, is that why John sacrificed himself? Did the wife of that old man die from the monster? I think so, because it looked like she had that big wound in her, right? Here's the way I put the scene together in my head. I think the woman went out, made a noise, monster killed her. Husband went out looking for her, saw the body, completely heartbroken, goes, because he just doesn't want to live anymore, right? He's just overwhelmed with grief and pain, and he yells out. But he says, if so, is that why John sacrificed? I'm not quite sure how you're tying in John's sacrifice to save his kids with that scenario. I'm not really clear how you're drawing a line there. Lori Scott writes, Dad's scream reminded me of the scream in The Descent. Yeah, there's a little bit of that too as well, absolutely. Sinosleep07 writes, don't ever want to hear any critic cry about jump scares again. No one cares when a movie is well reviewed. Why does it matter when it's not? Wait a second, let's try this again. Don't ever want to hear any critic cry about jump scares again. No one cares when a movie is well reviewed. Why does it matter when it's not? Yeah, a lot of people care when a movie's well reviewed or not. If it's not well reviewed, that probably means it's not a very good movie. And look, here's the thing about this movie. Jump scares are a cheap trick when that's all you got. And I think you and I have both seen our share of horror movies when the director clearly didn't know squat about doing horror and all they had were jump scares. And to me, jump scares become a very cheap parlor trick. When all you've got is, boo! When that's all you've got, then you're in for a pretty long 2 hours and a pretty painful 2 hours. When you have a movie where jump scares are just a side thing, when your jump scares aren't your main tool and they're just additional little things in there to mix it up even more, when the tension and the atmosphere and the context of it is what's driving the horror and the fear, and then you mix in like horrifying monster, and then you mix in the odd jump scare to take advantage of the context, then that's something different. Then it can become a very effective tool. A good jump scare can become a very effective tool. The problem is you get a lot of horror movies that are being made by people who have no idea how to make horror, and all they know how to do is a jump scare. And when the jump scare is your main thing, then you've got a pretty poor movie on your hand. So that's why you hear a lot of people sometimes complain about jump scares, is because when that's all you got, then it's done. Like, look, the right amount of salt on a steak just brings the steak to a new level, right? Just when you salt it and season it just right. If you just bring out a plate of salt, that ain't a meal. That's just a plate of salt. That's somebody who doesn't know how to cook. When you use the jump scare like salt to season the horror movie and not be the main dish of the horror movie, it can be very effective and work great. When all you got is cheap jump scares and it comes across as really cheap and desperate. Like any 12-year-old kid with an iPhone can make a little movie with nothing but jump scares and have, oh, look, the camera's here. And, oh, no, Saki, but the monster's coming out. Like when that happens, and that's cheap. So, yeah, anyway, there's that. Let's see. Final two questions of the day, then we'll wrap this thing up. Eric DeRigi writes, how come there was no backlash for the backstory of these monsters like there was for Snoke? I don't think fans always need to know the origin. Well, I mean, look, to give the people who cried about the backstory of Snoke, to cut them a little bit of slack, the fact of the matter is, like, we had a previous movie to him, and then he comes, and then he's around for a couple movies, and they were expecting to see something more. I always contended we didn't need to know anymore, because in the original trilogy, we never knew any more about the Emperor. So I don't know why anybody felt the need to know more about Snoke, but in Snoke's defense, or in the defense of those people, he was a character spread over 2 movies. You would think they would give him a little bit of backstory. With the origin of these monsters, it was completely irrelevant to what the story was about. And I don't think John Krasinski wanted to distract from the main point of what this movie's about by giving us pointless backstory of where the monsters come from, how the world get into this position in the first place, blah, blah, blah. To John Krasinski, I think, that was all just distraction. That would have been just distraction from what the heart of this movie was, which was this family. It wasn't important. When you understand what this movie's about, it wasn't important what these monsters were. It wasn't important where the monsters came from. And it wasn't important why the world was in the shape it was in. All we needed to know was that the monsters are there. This is how they hunt the people. And this is the situation the world is in. We didn't need to know the why behind any of it to understand the gist of this movie. And I think John Krasinski probably felt like going into any of the whys on that just would have become a distraction from where the movie really was. And I think that was the key to it too. Let's see. Koba then writes, I mean, play loud music, not people screaming. Yeah, but again, you play the loud music, the monsters go hunt and destroy whatever's playing the loud music. Now you're back to square one, right? So that's good. That's why they had the fireworks set up, right? To be a big distraction. You'd think maybe they would have set up one or two other noisemakers as an emergency fallback, but you can only use it once, right? Because once you use it, the monsters go to where it is and destroy it. So there's that. So clearly the way to live was to try to live silently. And then every once in a while, if you had to, have a noisemaker as an emergency, fire alarm, if you'll get my meaning. So then they go that way. All right, guys, that will do it for this special in-depth, open spoiler discussion and review about A Quiet Place. I loved this movie so much. By the way, guys, on Monday, I'm going to be showing a video segment on your guys' reaction and reviews to A Quiet Place. So do me a favor, jump on the Stardust app that you can see right here. Jump on the Stardust app, get the app, record your review and reaction to it, and maybe you'll see yourself pop up in the video as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me this Saturday talking about A Quiet Place. I've enjoyed this a lot. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Keep the conversation going with each other. Are you watching this video after we've done it live? Jump down to the comment section. Leave your thoughts on the movie. What are some big things that stood out to you in it as well? All right, guys, that'll do it for me. Thanks a lot for joining me. My name's John Campia, and until my next video, bye-bye.